I never thought that a canceled return flight would expose a theft planned by my own child. The moving truck was already halfway loaded when I stepped out of the lift in my church flats, returning home after my canceled 3:10 p.m. Southwest flight from Houston, and when I shouted, "What's going on here?" My son Derek, who was directing two movers from Fast Haul Express, turned pale and muttered, "Mom, weren't you on vacation?" I hadn't even shut the car door. A padded dolly bumped against my porch rail, and one of the men was wheeling out my maple desk. My maple desk. The one with my passport, the 1994 family reunion album, and the locked drawer with my birth certificate. I stepped up onto the porch. "Put that down, right now." The older mover glanced at Derek. "Sir?" "Do it," I said. My voice came out flat. I still had my church wrap in one hand and my roller bag in the other. The desk's legs scraped the ramp as they lowered it, both men now wary. A box labeled basement trash was split open on the porch swing, and from inside it I saw the corner of my wedding veil. Not my dress, my veil. The one I'd stitched pearls into by hand while pregnant with Derek. He finally spoke. "Mom, this isn't what it looks like. I see my veil in a trash box." He rubbed his neck. "It's just decluttering. You told me you wanted to downsize. I said I wanted to replace the roof. You weren't supposed to be back until Sunday." That slip, that one sentence, told me this wasn't improvisation. This was a timed operation that got caught mid-lift because of a glitch in his calendar. I asked to see the paperwork, bill of lading, property release form, anything. One of the movers fumbled in a clipboard and showed me a contract with my name, not my signature. I snapped a photo with my phone. The date read October 26th, 2 days after I flew out. The neighbor's dog barked across the street. I stepped backward, leveled my voice, and said, "No one moves another inch until I call the police and my lawyer." Derek's face crumpled for a second. Then he composed himself like he was the one wronged. "You don't have to make this ugly." I was dialing already. 2 weeks earlier, at October 14th, I'd told Derek I'd be in Galveston visiting my sister Dolores for 2 weeks. He insisted on booking my flight himself, and I only found out something was wrong because the return leg got auto-canceled from an edited departure address. I was standing at the Southwest kiosk in Houston, trying to check in, when the agent squinted at the screen and said, "Ma'am, this leg was canceled yesterday. Says your departure airport was changed to El Paso." I laughed, thinking it was a system glitch. I've never even been to El Paso. But when I pulled up the itinerary on my phone, the change was there, modified through the airline portal by a user logged in under Derek's email, which I only recognized because he used the same lowercase d in every login. I had to pay out of pocket to rebook for the next day, but weather delays pushed the return to Friday. If the El Paso switch hadn't triggered a cancellation, if Houston flights had run on time, I would have come back Sunday like Derek planned after the house was stripped, relisted, and locked under someone else's name. Dolores offered to call him herself once I told her what had happened, but I didn't want noise. I needed proof. I started writing everything down. Date, time, flight ID, agent's name, even the name tag of the Lyft driver who took me back to her place. I screenshotted the email alerts. Derek had set the original booking to email-only updates, but forgot to unlink my phone number from the account. That's how I caught it. That night, while Dolores slept in the guest room across the hall, I sat up on her sun porch with her old laptop. I logged into my HOA portal just to clear my head and got a red banner. "Your access has been suspended. Please contact administrator." Derek had changed the portal PIN again. He'd done it once in August to help reset a lost password, then claimed the login never mattered. But it mattered now, because that account held roof repair approvals, mailbox key requests, emergency contact info, and my property title number. I checked the USPS Informed Delivery app. No updates for 5 days. Then I remembered he had forwarded my mail for safety back in September. That's when he started setting the stage. First the mail, then the HOA, then the fake vacation. He moved slow so I wouldn't feel it happening. This wasn't the first time Derek had crossed a line. He'd moved my mail for safekeeping, changed the PIN on the HOA portal, and ignored me for weeks. But this time, I noticed my mother's cedar chest was missing from the porch, and that was the final straw. That chest had sat under the front window for 38 years. I kept the twins' baby shoes in there, my mother's Bible, receipts from the land my grandfather bought in Alabama, I'd told Derek before, more than once, not to touch it, not even to move it inside when it rained. He always rolled his eyes like it was just another piece of junk. But I knew what that chest meant. And the moment I saw the bare space where it used to sit, I felt something settle in me. Cold, exact, and done. I walked back inside and followed the path of half-packed boxes. They weren't just clearing clutter. They were categorizing. Boxes marked donate, trash, estate, and scan. I picked up a file folder from the top of one and flipped it open. Xeroxed pages from my old journals. Not copies I'd made. These were scanned without permission, my handwriting sliced across the grain of copy paper. In the dining room, the silver was gone from the hutch. Not stolen, placed in a padded bin labeled appraisal pending. He was cataloging the valuables. That's when I knew this wasn't just Derek trying to simplify things like he always claimed when I pushed back. This was legal staging. They were prepping for a transfer, not a clean-out. Ava's influence was all over it. Everything boxed in firm categories, nothing sentimental kept. Ava didn't believe in emotional clutter. She called it attachment dysfunction once, at Thanksgiving, when I refused to throw out my father's service coat. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the empty peg where my spice rack used to hang, and for a second I didn't know whether to scream or throw something. Instead, I pulled out my phone, scrolled past Derek's contact, and tapped Denise Miller's name. No voicemail, just a text. Can you meet tomorrow? I think I need to file something. Denise replied in under 5 minutes. 10 a.m. Bring anything you've got. I slipped the folder into my purse. If they touched that chest, they touched everything. The house. The past. Me. I followed the movers into my own house. Boxes labeled donate and trash filled the foyer. And when I asked Derek where the family photo albums were, he said coldly, "They're being digitized," then turned back to Ava, his wife, who kept checking her phone. I stepped between them. "You didn't ask me." "They were falling apart," Ava replied without looking up. "Digitizing protects them long term." "No. Digitizing makes them yours to edit and bury," I said. "Where are they, Ava?" She shrugged. "They're in good hands." That's when I noticed the portable scanner case by the stairs. Not some basic machine. This was the $900 model from B&H Photo, still open, connected to Derek's laptop. Scanned images flicked across the screen in auto preview, photos from Christmas, '89, my parents, 40th anniversary, my old tax forms. All stripped from their albums, flattened under glass, their context gone. Just pieces now, detached and portable. I want them returned. Today. Derek shifted, clearly irritated. "We'll bring them back once they're cleaned up. You're overreacting." "You're trespassing," I said, "and you know it." He didn't answer. Just turned away like he was late for something more important. I followed him down the hall, past the half-empty linen closet and the disassembled guest bed, to the garage, where Ava had stacked my framed certificates, diploma, and old nursing license in a plastic tub with a sticky note that said, "Shred?" The nerve of it. She didn't even bother removing the question mark. "I've lived here 41 years, I said. "Not one of you gets to mark what stays or goes." "We're not trying to erase you, Mom," Derek said, opening the garage door like he was done. "We're just helping you move on." "You mean out." He stopped, just for a second. That flicker of guilt passed so quickly, I might have missed it if I hadn't raised him. I stepped back into the kitchen and took 3 photos of the open laptop with the scanning program, making sure the timestamps showed. Then I took another of the folder where Ava had placed my banking statements from 2020 through 2023, separated by account. "Who gave you permission to open my mail?" "Technically, it came to the house," Ava said, finally meeting my eyes. "That'll be your mistake." I didn't wait for more. I picked up every folder I could find with my name, dropped them into my bag, and walked outside to the porch to call Denise again. That night, I called attorney Denise Miller, my friend from Zion Baptist, and the only person I trust with estate matters. And by 10 a.m. the next morning, we were at her office in West End, reviewing the deed transfer history and my power of attorney documents. Denise kept her office orderly, framed diplomas, polished desk, a small kettle steaming beside the printer. She didn't waste time on sympathy. "Start from the beginning," she said, sliding a yellow legal pad toward me. "Names, dates, signatures, anything that doesn't match your consent." I handed over the photos of the forged moving contract, the images of my scanned albums, and the folder with my banking statements Ava had touched. Denise looked over each page, humming low, steady, the way she did in church when she was thinking through a sermon. She called in her paralegal, a quiet woman named Tori, and had her pull the property record from the Fulton County Clerk's site. The file loaded slow, like it knew it was about to ruin my day. When it opened, Denise's brow tightened. "You said you never sold or gifted this property, correct?" I nodded. "Then explain this." On the monitor was a digital stamp. Quitclaim deed, recorded October 18th, 2025. Signature L.J. Carter. My name, my address, my home, but a handwriting I'd never seen. Worse, the file showed it had been notarized 2 days after my outbound flight to Houston. "That's a felony right there," Denise said, clicking open the witness field. The name listed, R. Toombs, didn't ring a bell. Tori printed the full record while Denise scrolled through the filing metadata. "Uploaded through a remote notarization vendor," she said. "Means whoever did this knew how to make it look clean. But remote notarization leaves IP logs. We can subpoena those." I asked how long that would take. "Depends on how hard they push back," she said. "But I can file a preliminary fraud affidavit by this afternoon. It'll flag the deed as contested." She drafted it right there, typing each line with the calm of someone used to stopping thieves in pressed shirts. "We'll file before the 3 p.m. cutoff," she said, glancing at her watch. "Once it's in the system, they can't finalize any sale without a hearing." I signed beside her, steady-handed. For the first time in days, I felt the clock work for me, not against me. Denise's paralegal pulled up a notarized quitclaim deed from October 18th, bearing a shaky forged signature of mine and a witness name I didn't recognize, someone named R. Toombs. The signature looked like a nervous imitation, the kind of thing someone traces once and guesses the rest. My looped J was crooked, my L misshapen, and the tail on Carter bled too long across the line. I studied it silently, not because I needed convincing, but because I wanted to remember exactly how careless they'd gotten. "Do you know this name?" Denise pointed to the witness line. "No, never met a Toombs in my life." Tori had already started a cross-check. She pulled up state notary records and narrowed the search to the 6 counties around Atlanta. Nothing. "There's no licensed notary under that name active in Georgia this year," she said. "Could be out of state or fake," Denise leaned forward. "Or disbarred. I've seen it happen. Old friends used to notarize each other's mess, thinking nobody checks." She clicked into a secondary registry for suspended legal professionals. That's where it hit. Regina Toombs, notary license revoked, October 2023. Former paralegal. Denise clicked her LinkedIn profile. There she was, grinning in a law firm headshot, arm around Ava in one tagged photo from 3 years ago. Former roommates, same alma mater. Still listed as freelance legal services on her bio. Ava had dragged her into this. "Print it all," I said. "Her license status, the LinkedIn, the disciplinary action." "I want it in the file." Tori nodded and stapled the first batch while Denise composed the cover letter for our fraud affidavit. "This witness isn't just suspicious," she said. "She's inadmissible. If Ava used her for notarization after revocation, anything signed is already compromised." The affidavit went into the system just before 2:45 p.m. Tori returned from the clerk's office with a stamped copy. It bore the intake initials GF and the reference code we'd need to contest the deed publicly. "Keep that original," Denise said. "Scan a copy to your personal drive and print 3 more. Don't hand out the original unless you're under subpoena." I took the document carefully and slid it into a flat envelope. Derek and Ava had written me out of my own life, but they'd left fingerprints. And fingerprints don't lie when the paper talks louder than blood. I logged into the Fulton County Clerk's portal using my old credentials, cross-referenced the witness name with Ava's law school contact list on LinkedIn, and confirmed that R. Toombs was Ava's former roommate, now disbarred. It didn't take long. I still had access to Ava's LinkedIn through a dummy account I'd made years ago, when she started treating every family gathering like a networking opportunity. Back then, she'd posted job changes and bar exam milestones like her life was a resume. Now that same digital trail worked against her. Under connections, there she was, Regina Toombs, listed as former roommate/legal associate, with 3 shared contacts and a congratulatory comment from Ava dated March 2022. Couldn't have done law school without my rock, Regina. Here's to the next chapter. The next chapter turned out to be fraud. Regina had gone quiet online after losing her notary license. No new activity, no job updates. But Ava hadn't severed ties. I dug deeper, checking Ava's tagged photos and seeing Regina's name pop up on 2 brunch invites just last spring. Still close enough to do a favor, still dangerous. I downloaded PDF snapshots of the full contact page, every mutual tag, and archived them to my own Google Drive. Denise had warned me not to rely on screenshots alone. Get the metadata where you can, she'd said, because once they know you're watching, they'll start deleting. She was right. By noon that Saturday, both Ava's and Regina's LinkedIn profiles had gone private. But I had what I needed. I also pulled Ava's name through a legal research site Denise mentioned. An old Lexus trial login still worked, and found 2 small claims cases dismissed in 2019 and 2020, both involving contract disputes over services never rendered. Minor amounts, but the pattern was there. Overpromise, extract, exit. At 5:12 p.m., I received an email confirmation from the clerk's office. Our fraud affidavit had been officially recorded. Entry ID #FCE-500-91023, flagged against parcel 00947111. Any attempt to transfer or encumber the title now triggered an automatic legal hold. I read that line twice. Automatic legal hold. They hadn't just overstepped. They'd walked into a process with walls. Now I had the tools to build mine higher. When I confronted Derek over coffee at Cascade Grill that Saturday, he looked me in the eye and said, "You don't even use the house, Mom. You're almost 70. Then added that Ava had found a way to simplify things legally. I chose the table near the window, not because I liked the view, but because the light made people feel watched. Derek showed up 5 minutes late, still wearing the same zip-up he'd had on while directing the movers. No apology. Just sat down like we were going to talk about Thanksgiving plans. "I know about the quitclaim," I said, before the waitress even reached us. "And I know who Regina Toombs is." He didn't flinch. That scared me more than if he'd panicked. He folded his hands like he was leading a meeting. It wasn't supposed to be this dramatic. Forging my name and faking a notary isn't dramatic, Derek. It's criminal. He glanced around the cafe, clearly hoping I'd lower my voice. I didn't. I pushed the printout of the notary revocation across the table. "This woman can't legally witness anything. You signed off knowing that." He didn't touch the paper. Just leaned back and said, "You don't live there full time. Ava found a way to streamline the process. It's not like we sold it yet. She filed listing drafts with your name and mine, and a bank letter naming her as co-owner." He rubbed his temple. "We were going to tell you. You had the locks changed." That got him. A slight shift in his jaw. A quick glance at the coffee mug. "It's not what you think." "No, Derek. It's worse." He tried to pivot. "Mom, you're holding on to things that are weighing you down. The house is old. The yard's too big. You've talked for years about moving closer to Dolores. I also talked about getting the roof inspected, not having my life sold behind my back." He finally picked up the paper, stared at it a moment, then set it back down. "You're really gonna make this ugly, aren't you?" I reached into my bag and pulled out the stamped affidavit copy. "Already filed. The deed's under fraud review. The sale's frozen." He didn't finish his coffee, just stood up, stiff and quiet, and walked out the front door like he didn't recognize me anymore. I printed out Ava's Zillow listing draft, where she claimed vacant estate with motivated sellers, and attached a bank pre-approval letter from Wells Fargo naming her as co-owner, alongside a forged letter I supposedly signed requesting early liquidation of my retirement CD. The file came from a shared folder Ava had forgotten to unlink from my old Gmail. She'd sent it to herself from my printer's scan-to-email function, probably assuming I wouldn't notice the sent from metadata at the bottom. But I did. The folder was titled Pending Title Transfer, November, and it held 6 documents: the draft listing, a preliminary appraisal, an agent commission agreement, and 2 financial disclosures marked internal. Then came the forged letter. On the surface, it looked professional, dated October 16th, formatted in formal language, complete with a fake digital signature and my full retirement account number. The request instructed the bank to release funds ahead of the CD's maturity date, citing urgent estate repositioning. The wording alone made my stomach turn. I never used terms like that. Ava had written it for an audience she thought would nod along, not someone who'd built that account working overtime shifts and brown bagging lunch for 20 years. I printed 3 copies, one for Denise, one for the bank, and one for myself, and then called the Wells Fargo fraud line. After 30 minutes on hold, a specialist named Mr. DeHaven pulled up my profile and confirmed the request had been flagged as incomplete. It lacked voice authorization. No withdrawal had occurred yet, but the account had been placed under, quote, account representative review, which explained why my recent statement hadn't arrived. I asked for a security hold and was walked through the identity verification process. When he asked if I wanted to revoke all third-party access, I said yes, clearly and twice. He read back Ava's name. She had added herself using a form uploaded from an IP address on 10th Street, right near their condo. DeHaven said they would log the attempt as suspected fraud and send me a control number for the record. #WF-0234879-F. Before hanging up, he added, "You'll also want to update your beneficiary list. There's an active change request dated August 19th listing a new contingent." I already knew who it was. Buried in the listing paperwork was a bombshell. Ava had added herself as a contingent beneficiary to my annuity account last August, a change I never authorized, verified by a screenshot of an IP address traced back to their condo on 10th Street. I'd almost missed it. The annuity file was tucked behind appraisal notes, misnamed as a survey summary. But when I opened it, I saw my provider's logo in the top corner and the words "Beneficiary Change Request Confirmed" at the center of the page. The form bore my name, birthday, last 4 digits of my social, and Ava's name in the contingent beneficiary field. The primary still listed Derek, something I'd stupidly done in 2012, thinking it was a safe fallback. Ava's addition, though, was new, August 19th. I'd been in Birmingham that week, visiting my cousin Bernice, without internet access and barely any cell reception. I couldn't have submitted anything. I checked the submission log. Thankfully, the provider's online portal had a digital trail, and there it was. IP address 172.22.1.4.1.9, login timestamp August 19th, 25, 11:42 a.m. I copied it, pasted it into an IP lookup tool, and there it sat, Midtown Atlanta, zip code 30309, registered under a residential Comcast account. 2 blocks from where Derek and Ava leased their condo. I called the annuity provider immediately. After passing security questions and verifying my PIN, I asked to see the full history of beneficiary updates. The representative paused. "This change came through the online portal, with e-signature verification," she said. "Do you have reason to believe it was unauthorized?" "Yes," I said. "And I have IP trace evidence." That changed her tone. She issued a fraud review ticket, flagged the account, and walked me through revoking all pending changes. I requested hard copies of the current designations sent by certified mail, and she noted my file with a formal dispute code, #F7724B. Then she scheduled a call back for Tuesday to confirm the reversal had processed. "Can you confirm Ava Carter is no longer listed?" I asked. "Effective immediately, she's been removed." I thanked her and wrote the time down, 4:38 p.m. Then I logged out of the portal, uploaded the IP trace results, and printed the file for Denise. The more they forged, the more paper they gave me to bury them with. 3 days later, I returned home to find my locks changed, a notice taped to the door claiming the property was under occupancy transition, and my neighbor Carol Lee said a realtor lady had toured 6 people through last weekend. The paper was cheap office stock, taped down with blue painter's tape, probably printed from someone's desktop. It had no legal header, no contact number, just a bold sentence. Notice: property undergoing transitional occupancy. Do not disturb. I stood there with 2 grocery bags hanging from my forearms, keys useless, and rage collecting in my chest like water behind a broken dam. The deadbolt didn't budge. They'd replaced it, and the doorknob too, swapped brass for brushed nickel like the house belonged to them now. I stepped back and rang Carol's bell. She opened fast, as if she'd been watching from her front room. "I didn't know what to do," she said right away. "There were cars all over the street Saturday." Some woman with a clipboard and heels walked 6 people through. She said the place was staged, but still, Under review. I figured you were renting. Until I saw the sign today. I thanked her, stepped inside, and stood in her foyer with my bag still in hand. I couldn't sit yet. My body was tight, every nerve drawn up like a wire about to snap. They changed the locks? Carol asked gently. I nodded. 3 days after I filed the fraud affidavit. We walked to her back den where she pulled up her security camera feed. It auto-deletes every 10 days, but I saved Saturday's clip. She hit play. On screen, Ava stood on my porch, wearing a blazer, holding a folder, speaking to a young couple in athleisure. Behind her, the door was wide open. They're showing it like a flip property, Carol said. You can tell by the way she talks. I pulled out my phone and recorded a short clip of the footage, timestamp and all. Then I took a still frame and uploaded it to my case folder. A woman I didn't trust had keys to a house I legally still owned, and she was treating it like hers to market. That was enough. Tomorrow I'd be back in Denise's office. No more waiting for them to slip. I'd start setting traps. I sat alone in Carol's sunroom that night, sipping her peppermint tea, staring at the blurry security cam still of Ava on my porch, and realized they truly believed I wouldn't fight back, that I would vanish quietly into someone else's version of my ending. The footage didn't need to be high resolution. I knew Ava's posture, the tilt of her chin when she thought she was in control, the way she angled her shoulder to direct people inside like a seasoned host. It wasn't nerves. It was ownership. She'd practiced for this. I watched her step aside, gesturing toward my entryway, as if her place in my home was natural. And Derek, he wasn't in the video, but his absence said enough. He didn't need to be there. He'd already done the heavy lifting. I pressed pause on the clip. Her face froze mid-sentence. Arrogant, assured, young enough to believe that documents and tech made her untouchable. Carol sat across from me, knitting a baby blanket for one of her nieces, saying nothing but present. She didn't offer comfort. She offered space. After everything I'd lost over the years, husband to cancer, sister to bitterness, time to labor, I finally understood the worst part of betrayal. It wasn't anger. It was calculation. They hadn't acted out of desperation. They'd counted on me staying passive. They think I'm too old, I said, watching Ava lean against my doorframe like she belonged there. They think I'll back down. Carol set down her yarn. You're not the backing down type. I took another sip, swallowed the bitter hint of dried mint, and reopened my email. Denise had sent over a new document template, formal notice to rescind Derek's HOA proxy and revoke power of attorney privileges, effective immediately. All I had to do was sign and scan it back. I pulled out my phone and used the mobile scan app, lining up each corner with care. I initialed the bottom in blue ink, the way I always had, and wrote the time in the margin. Then I clicked send. The timestamp hit my inbox at 8:19 p.m. That was the first reversal, the first official step toward reasserting control, however small. I closed the laptop and said out loud, mostly to myself, but loud enough for Carol to hear, if they think they've seen ugly, they haven't met legal yet. With Denise's help, I filed an injunction at the courthouse, issued a fraud alert to Equifax, contacted the HOA board to rescind Derek's access, and scheduled a meeting with the title company for November 3rd, the date they'd planned to close without me. We didn't waste time. At 9:03 a.m., I met Denise on the courthouse steps with every document in a manila envelope, the forged quitclaim, the altered annuity forms, the IP trace report, the video stills from Carol's camera. Inside, the clerk barely looked up as he stamped the temporary restraining order and entered it into the housing system. Case number CV251103T, tied directly to my parcel ID. Denise leaned over and whispered, "This freezes any property transaction until a formal hearing. You bought time." Next stop was the credit bureau. I used a courthouse computer to log into Equifax, flagged my profile with an identity theft alert, and requested full credit freezes from the 3 reporting agencies. Within minutes, confirmation emails rolled in. No new accounts, no hard inquiries, no refinancing, not without direct verbal authorization and government ID. The HOA was trickier. Their office sat tucked behind a half-empty strip mall with fading signage, but the board president, Mr. Lenham, agreed to meet us. He wore an old golf jacket and kept calling me Miss Laverne, like I hadn't paid dues for 20 years. I handed him a notarized letter removing Derek from the property file, revoking all proxy votes and communication rights. He skimmed it, looked mildly annoyed, then asked, "So this isn't a family misunderstanding?" I stared at him. "Does your HOA policy allow forged deeds and illegal lock changes?" He backed off fast. "We'll update our records by end of day." By 2:30 p.m., Denise had secured a meeting at the title company Ava listed in her sale paperwork, Manning and Howe Transfer Services. I checked the calendar and saw the closing was scheduled for November 3rd at 2 p.m. Denise got us on the books for that exact time, not a minute before or after. "This is how we box them in," she said as we walked back to her car. "Let them show up thinking they've won." At 2 p.m. sharp, I walked into the title office in my deep green wool coat and sat down across from the escrow officer, Ava, Derek, their mortgage broker, and a very quiet agent from Next Key Realty, who asked if I was here on behalf of the estate. I said no, I am the estate. The room was colder than expected, all brushed chrome and artificial hospitality. A tray of bottled water sat untouched on a console table. The escrow officer, a woman named Lee with a too smooth voice and a distracted manner, started to greet me like I was someone's assistant. Then she paused, glanced down at the folder in front of her, and realized my name matched the one on the original deed. Ava didn't speak. She looked like she'd swallowed something sharp and hadn't figured out how to hide it. Derek glanced at his phone, tapped the screen like that would summon an excuse, then looked past me toward the hallway, maybe hoping I was just early and security would shuffle me out quietly. Denise entered 5 seconds later, cool and unhurried, legal pad under her arm, a navy binder tucked against her hip. She nodded at the broker, then at Ava. "We're here to contest the closing," she said, "on behalf of the legal title holder, whose consent has not been obtained. We have documentation of fraud, false representation, and an invalid deed transfer." The agent, some young man with cufflinks too expensive for his age, leaned back. "We were told the estate was vacant and uncontested." "It's not vacant," I said, placing the stamped injunction on the table. "And it's certainly not uncontested." Ava finally spoke, reaching for a script she'd clearly practiced. "There's been a clerical miscommunication. We submitted all required forms." "You submitted a forged deed," Denise cut in, "signed by a disbarred notary and backed by fraudulent beneficiary claims. We have time-stamped evidence, bank fraud reports, and digital trace logs." The escrow officer blinked rapidly, flipping through her folder now like it might spontaneously clean itself. "Was this filed with the county?" "Entered October 27th, Denise replied. "Case number CV2-51103T. Your company is now on record as attempting to process a contested transfer." The room shifted. The temperature didn't change, but everyone looked colder. I sat still, hands folded, not smiling, just waiting to see who left first. I laid down the packet. Notarization, irregularities, my travel receipts proving I was out of state, the bank login metadata, and the forged annuity forms. Then Denise read aloud the cease and desist language, while Ava tried to blame it all on a clerical mix-up. The escrow officer stopped writing. Her pen hovered above the form, her mouth pressed in a hard line, and I could see her calculating how much liability her office had just inherited. She flipped to the back of the title folder, probably hoping to find a waiver that didn't exist. Ava kept talking, rushed now, desperate to control the damage. "We thought the quitclaim had already been recorded by Miss Carter," she said, voice tight, eyes bouncing between the broker and the agent. "It must have been an outdated form. Regina submitted it without checking the revocation status. Honestly, this is just confusion." Denise didn't blink. "Regina Toombs was disbarred in 2023. She had no legal standing to notarize anything. That's not confusion. That's knowing better and doing it anyway." The broker shifted uncomfortably. "Hold on," he said, looking at Derek. "So did your mom really agree to this?" The question hung in the air, heavy and dangerous. Derek opened his mouth, then shut it. His usual confidence had thinned. No eye contact. Just silence. Denise let the pause do its work. Then she reached into her binder and pulled out a sworn affidavit, the one I'd signed that morning at the district attorney's intake desk. It outlined everything: the forged deed, the altered bank forms, the unauthorized listing, the lock change. The affidavit carried the DA's seal, notarized by an officer who signed it in front of me while looking me in the eye. She placed it directly in front of the broker. Ava's face collapsed. No performance this time. No calculated spin. Just panic. She turned to Derek with a hiss that didn't carry words. Just noise. "You said she wouldn't be here." That was her mistake. Counting me out, assuming distance meant weakness. Assuming silence meant permission. "I'm here," I said calmly. "And I'm not leaving." The agent from Next Key stood up first, pulling the folder toward her chest like it might burn. "We don't deal in disputed properties," she said. "We're stepping away." And just like that, the sale began to unravel. When the broker asked Derek, "So did your mom really agree to this?" And Derek hesitated. Denise pulled out the affidavit I filed that morning with the DA's office, and Ava's face crumpled like tissue as she hissed, "You said she wouldn't be here." That sound, the way she said it, wasn't disappointment. It was exposure. Every person in the room now knew she'd built this deal on a lie. Even Lee, the title officer, leaned back in her chair, pulled her glasses off, and muttered, "We're done here." No dramatic exit, no threats, just the unmistakable tone of a professional cutting her losses before the building caught fire. The Next Key agent, Kendra, I think her name was, closed her binder without another word. Her expression said enough. Realtors know when a sale's gone septic. She didn't even ask for a copy of the affidavit. She already understood what it meant. When she stood up, she avoided Ava's eyes entirely and turned to me instead. "We won't be moving forward," she said quietly. "Our agency doesn't participate in contested sales." Ava didn't move. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Derek, on the other hand, stood too fast, knocking into the chair behind him, then made a beeline for the hallway without offering a single word to anyone. His silence said everything I needed. He was no longer covering for her. He was fleeing the fallout. Only the mortgage broker remained, still thumbing through his notes like he might salvage some commission from the wreckage. Denise handed him a copy of the cease and desist and said, "Any attempt to process financing on this property from this point forward will be reported as complicity in fraud. We'll have your license on file." He didn't argue, just gathered his papers and muttered something about contacting his compliance officer. When the door finally clicked shut behind all of them, the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was clean. The kind of silence that follows truth, spoken in full, with receipts. Lee slid the closing folder across the table toward Denise. "We'll mark this file terminated due to pending litigation and breach of representation," she said. "You'll receive formal notice in writing by week's end." Denise nodded. "That's all we need." And for once, I believed her. The title company canceled the transaction on the spot. The bank revoked Ava's co-beneficiary status, and the agent backed out of the listing entirely, saying, "We don't deal with fraud cases," while Derek stormed out without a word. Denise and I remained seated. There was no need to rush. When the foundation cracks, sometimes it's best to let the building fall under its own weight. I didn't flinch when Ava slammed her portfolio closed. I didn't flinch when Derek's chair scraped hard against the tile. What was left to fear? They'd already tried to erase me. All they did now was confirm how far they were willing to go, and how fast they ran once it turned against them. 2 hours later, back at Denise's office, we sent certified letters to every institution named in the fraudulent files. The annuity company confirmed receipt of the removal request and included an internal case number, AN964F, marked under active investigation. The bank followed suit, stating Ava would be flagged in their client watch list, and that any future attempts to act on my behalf would be treated as identity theft until proven otherwise. Denise drafted a separate notice to Ava's employer, listing the investigation details without accusation, just facts and documentation. She left the last page blank, giving them the chance to draw their own conclusions. Lawyers knew how to protect institutions, but they also knew when someone was a liability. Later that evening, I returned to Carol's with 2 envelopes in my bag and a full list of account freezes, ownership confirmations, and pending case references. She handed me a mug of ginger tea and asked, gently, "Do you think they'll stop now?" I didn't answer immediately. I pulled out the agent withdrawal form from Next Key, unfolded it on her kitchen table, and ran my finger over the sentence that mattered. Seller misrepresentation confirmed. Listing contract voided. "They won't come back through the front door," I finally said, "but they might try a window." She nodded once, then slid a spare key across the table. I changed my guest room lock. You stay here as long as you want. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. Not yet. Control wasn't comfort. But it was a start. By November 10th, my locks were rekeyed, Derek's name removed from all accounts, and a new deed filed in my trust's name. When Carol came over with banana bread, I showed her the new keys and whispered, I wasn't supposed to come home that day, but I'm glad I did. The locksmith, a quiet woman named Regina, different Regina, took just under an hour to finish. She installed a keypad system on both the front and back doors and handed me the master override code, written in her clean, blocky handwriting. I asked for a physical key as well, something I could hold, something no one else had ever copied. When I slid that brass shape into the new deadbolt and heard it click, it wasn't just a lock changing, it was the sound of my name taking up space again. Denise called that afternoon to confirm the trust had been finalized. We'd moved the house into the name of the L. Carter Living Trust, with me as sole trustee. That decision meant no more reliance on any outside agent, no chance of a future forged signature slipping through. It also meant when I pass, it goes exactly where I choose. No interference, no surprises. Carol came by just after 4, wrapped in her oversized sweater, holding that loaf of banana bread like it was a peace offering for a war she didn't start. We sat in my freshly reclaimed living room, now free of moving boxes and insultingly labeled trash bins. She asked about Derek, if he'd reached out, if he'd apologized. I told her the truth. A single text, no words, just a forwarded screenshot of an account closure confirmation. No apology, no ownership, just exit. I think he thought I'd still thank him, I said, for helping. He was helping himself, she replied, slicing the loaf. I nodded and reached into the drawer where the keys now lived. Held one up. Every inch of this house has been touched by what they did. But not this. Not these. They hadn't earned keys. They'd stolen time, paper, trust. But I got something back they never saw coming. Not the house. The silence after you win without screaming.